Keeping family matters out of the courts and dealing with them privately is one of the most important things that you can do in your life if you're dealing with such a matter. And for that reason, in my opinion, if that's something you are dealing with, or if you know someone that you care about who's dealing with that kind of situation, or if you generally are helping someone who is, this could be one of the most valuable videos you ever watch. And that's not an exaggeration. I do take this very seriously, and so I'm not approaching this topic lightly, and I want to invite you to do the same. Nothing can be perhaps more heartbreaking than hearing some of the stories that come out of family court with respect to children in particular, but just any family court matters. So this is a solutions-oriented video, as all of my videos are. I'm not just here to complain or just point out a problem without providing you with what I consider to be a valuable solution. So I want to invite you to stick with me because I feel it's going to be worth it. But first, a quick disclaimer. Nothing that I'm going to share today may be construed as legal advice. I'm not an attorney at law, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm not offering any legal advice. All I'm going to do today is share with you valuable knowledge that I feel is so important that I thought it was worth bringing to your attention. But obviously, you're going to need to use your discernment and good judgment in order to validate the information for yourself and go basically put it to the test. Okay? Also, if you're brand new to my work and you're brand new to what we teach at the Freedom Studio, some of this may be a little bit out of context. So if you're jumping in here, that's great. Definitely stick with us, especially if this topic is meaningful to you. However, I'm also going to encourage you to go back and watch some of my other videos because some of the concepts are foundational and I can't necessarily cover everything in one video. Okay, but I'm going to try to do my best because, again, this is such an important topic. This has come up a couple of times recently. It's coming up more and more often. And yeah, I basically want to address it. So when I talk about family court, what I'm mainly referring to are, for example, issues of child support and child custody. That's a big one. Also divorce and relationship matters, and also family matters related to inheritance, what is often called probate. So those are the big three, but I'm probably mostly talking about issues with children and child support and child custody because those are among some of the most heartbreaking and difficult to deal with because of all the emotions and because of the potential impact to children when things don't go really well. So that's part of the reason why I think this is so important and why it's worth bringing this up to you. It's also because I care a lot. I care about the children and I care about what happens to them. And knowing what I know about the commercial court system, I know it's not the right place to deal with these matters. So let me explain. Let me kind of get into this. A good way for you to discern the truth of what I'm saying is pay attention to the following. Have you yourself or someone you love, or just in general from what you've seen by watching stories online, have you noticed how many times a mother or father, sometimes both, will go to court for a child-related matter, and even though the parents, I don't like calling them parents for reasons I'm not going to really get into here, but the mother or father, the custodian, the guardian, we could say objectively they're doing their best. They have the best interest of the child at heart. Let's say that's the case. And so many times you have a mother or father or a guardian who clearly has the best interest of the child at heart, and yet the court rules against them. The court rules against them and basically just, either takes the child away or awards them to what seems to be the parent who is more controlling, is not being fair in the matter, and yet they still get ruled against in court. So why is that? Why is that? Well, I'm going to help you degloss that. I'm going to help you see what's going on here. Again, for those of you who follow my work, you're going to already know a lot of this, so it's going to make a lot more sense. So if you're brand new, this is where having the additional context can help. So as many of you know already, all the courts are commercial. That's why you've probably heard that expression, all crime is commercial. Everything is commercialized. And when you're in the courts, when you're in the maritime admiralty commercial jurisdiction, everything is basically international contract disputes. So international contract disputes between corporations or persons, legal persons, which is a type of corporation. So think of the straw man, what some people call the ens legis. So when you go into a court as a mother or father, or as someone who is dealing with one of these family issues, if you're going in a general appearance, which is what most people do, you are not there as the living man or woman, as that mother or father. You're actually there either representing the legal fiction, or in some cases, many cases, if you've hired an attorney, the attorney is representing the legal fiction. Now, the legal fiction, which is the corporate person, of course, doesn't have any rights. It's a man created, it's a creation of man, and therefore we control it. And corporations do not have rights, or they have very few rights. They actually just have privileges and benefits. And persons, legal persons or corporations, of course, are subject to the entire body of commercial code, what we call statutes, and they can't escape that. And the judge, frankly, can really interpret the law, the statutes, any way he or she desires in order to create a ruling. So in the commercial courts, it really has nothing to do with, for example, the true welfare of the child. It has very little or nothing to do with the welfare of the couple, if it's a couple-related matter, or the family, if it's a general family-related matter. That's not where you're going to get a true remedy, right? Because you're in a commercial jurisdiction. It's all about contract disputes. It's all banking. It's all banking, right? We've talked about that extensively on our channel, and that's why we focus so much on learning equity as a way to transcend all of that and bring it back to the level of men and women. Bring it back to the level where rights do apply. Okay? Another way to say the same thing, it's always going to be brutal in court. And again, if you've been in family court, or if you know someone, or if you've even watched proceedings from family court, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you know that's absolutely true. Okay? And the reason, like I'm saying, is because that jurisdiction is not the right place to deal with family matters. Family matters are private, and they should be dealt with privately between the men and women involved and the children, so that they can determine the best outcome. There is this tendency, just like there's a tendency in our society for people to, we've got to sue. Every time there's a problem, we just got to run to the courts and sue. Well, with family court, it's the same thing. People just assume that, hey, if there's a family issue that's just a little bit challenging, just a little bit contentious, we got to run to court, got to resolve that in court, got to lawyer up. No, you're never going to find true justice in the commercial courts with family related matters. It's not going to happen. Maybe the outcome will coincide with what's in the best interest, but frankly, that's arbitrary, because it could just as well go against the best interest of the child or of the family. And again, you don't have to go very far to come up with a testimonial about exactly how that plays out, especially if you yourself have been through that. And with such a high divorce rate, then it's not too hard to imagine how easy it is to find stories like that. Now, let me take a step back and just say something. A few years ago, I did create a video about parenting under natural law. And parenting is something very serious. It's very, very serious. I do not have children. However, that doesn't mean that I won't have children. I'm actually something that I've been contemplating. And that may very well happen. And when I approach parenting is something that should be taken on at a very high level of consciousness, because it's a big deal to bring someone into the world and to take care of them. It's a big deal to be the custodian or the guardian or the steward of a young mind as they become formed and as they acclimate themselves in the world. So this is not something that I think should be taken lightly. And the other thing I wanted to say is obviously choices of action lead to consequences. So it's important that when a mother and a father, if things have gone bad or in any family situation, you've got to own that shit. You've got to assume responsibility. It's not a blame game. Yes, sometimes other people involved do bad things or don't make the best decisions. I agree with that. But you need to be responsible for you. Remember, sovereignty is about self-responsibility. You assume responsibility and there is no victimhood. So all that's to say is what I'm going to explain on this video, what I'm going to share with you, will not work for someone who has bad intentions. It will not work for someone who's trying to manipulate or just trying to game the system to gain an advantage, to gain control of either a child or a family asset or something like that, or even a relationship. Okay, that won't work for people like that. So for people like that, they might as well be enmeshed, ensnared in the system because they're not going to be able to gain an advantage. But if you're someone who, despite maybe you've made bad decisions in relationship and it's very frustrating, it could even be heartbreaking, losing custody or partial custody of children, not being able to see your kids, having bad blood between relatives, having family issues. Hey, I get it. Those things are real and those things are serious, and I'm not belittling that. But what I'm going to share with you can help as long as you're willing to take full responsibility for everything that happens, especially from this point forward, which is really all that you can control. Okay? So we definitely don't want these matters to be in the courts, and so we need a way to take them out of the courts and put them into the private. Okay, we need to take them out of the courts and put them into the private. So how exactly would we go about doing that? How will we go about doing that? That's really the point of this video, right? How will we go about taking these matters out of the public and where they should not be, in my opinion, and putting them back into the private where they should properly be so that we can properly address them. Okay? So those of you who follow my work, you know I consider myself, among other things, to be a strategist. As a strategist, I'm always thinking strategically. What is the strategic perspective? What are the overall concepts that I need to bring to bear in order to make this happen? Okay? Well, we need to, if we're talking about resolving these family matters privately and they're in the public, two things need to happen. Number one, we need to fully discharge anything that's happening in the public. And secondarily, we need a way to mediate or resolve the matters privately. Okay, so we need those two pieces. This will not work if you neglect one of those two. Okay, this is a two-part strategy. So you kind of see where I'm going with this? Again, those of you who've been following my work or what we teach at the Freedom Studio, this is all going to make a lot of sense because it's just building atop everything we've been talking about up to this point. It's just bringing it all together. Okay? So if you find yourself as the defendant or a party to one of these family matters that's in court, the first step is you need to learn how to bring equity to the court in order to discharge it on the public side. And simultaneously, not after, not later, but at the same time, or maybe even before that, ideally, maybe even before that, but certainly at least at the same time, you need to release your thoughts of this can't be resolved privately. Oh, I can't talk to him, meaning your ex. He or she will never listen to reason. You need to release all of that. And you need to find a way to privately mediate and privately come to an arrangement, whether that be shared custody, for example, whether that be privately taking care of child support, whether that be privately working out how family matters, or I should say inheritances, family assets are properly distributed among the heirs. That actually brings up a third point, which is there's a third strategy for dealing with that, and that has to do with trust. But let's leave that aside because I'm mainly focused here talking about these very contentious and very heartbreaking situations where children are involved. That's the main focus here. So, what's the issue? So, you need to work these things out privately. Now, if you don't have a lot of experience, or you feel somewhat intimidated or even threatened to try to directly negotiate, which is always going to be your best option, then your next best bet is to hire a private mediator, a private, non-related third party, so not related by blood or marriage to you or your family, who can step in and help out. Someone who has an objective viewpoint, someone who can frankly see both sides, even if they themselves have an opinion that one side is correct, that's okay. But they can see both sides. They're good at negotiation. They're good at bringing parties together. They're great communicators. They're great listeners. So a private mediator is not the same as hiring an attorney. It's not the same as hiring an attorney. Could an attorney also be a great private mediator? Hey, everything is possible. Everything is possible. But that's not really the focus of an attorney, and that's not really what I'm recommending here. What I am recommending is that you explore the option of hiring a private mediator. Obviously, it's a professional role, and they deserve to be compensated for that because they're doing work. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Just like you would pay an attorney, you would pay a private mediator. Could it cost you less in the end? Probably, especially if you think about the opportunity cost or the lost cost of spending so much money on attorneys or in the court system, which can get expensive really fast if you let that run away. So yes, there will be a price to pay, and you will need to fairly compensate the mediator. If it's a close friend of the family who's willing to do it, maybe not for financial compensation, maybe for some other compensation, or maybe pro bono. In other words, they're not really expecting you. Hey, that's their decision. Some people may be willing to do that. But you should at least be willing to consider that maybe hiring a professional mediator, a private mediator, to help with you directly, to mediate directly between the parties with no intermediaries, is going to be the way to go. And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I hear people say all the time, oh, he'll never listen. She'll never listen to reason. There's no way to reason with them. It can definitely seem like that. It can definitely seem like that. But you'd be surprised. Everybody has motives. Everybody has desires. Everybody has something that will, everybody has some level of reason. Everybody has some degree of reason. Some people, obviously, their faculty of reason has been harmed or damaged in some way, and it's not going to be as great as others. But almost everybody has the seed of reason in them. And you'd be surprised. It's going to be a very, very small, very, very tiny percentage of people. I'm talking about, for example, people who are born psychopaths because they have no intuition and no conscience. Could it be more difficult to reason with them? Yeah, I mean, unless you can make it spin it like it's going to be to their benefit, you're probably not going to be able to mediate with them like you could with someone who has a conscience or, is able to tap into their intuition. But I'm just assuming that we're dealing with the 99% plus of people who are like that, who you're going to be able to appeal to it, okay? Who have fears, who have desires, who have motives, okay? I know some people are going to take issue with that, but let your own experience guide you, okay? So when I hear somebody say, oh, they'll never listen to reason, my first question is, why not? Because you deem that to be true? Have you tried? Right? Have you tried with a third party? Because if you're very emotionally involved, sure, I can understand why the other party, because there's strong emotions involved, maybe they're not going to be likely to listen to you, especially if there's been a lot of bad experiences, that led up to this point. But when you have an objective third party, you'd be very surprised at what can happen. Okay? So private mediation is extremely important when it comes to family matters. It's so important that many court systems have set up an adjunct corporation Sometimes they call it friends of the court. They call it other things. They actually use terms like referee. Now, that's all on the public side, so I'm not suggesting you use that. But that just shows you, like, they know that there needs to be some process in place to do mediation. So all I'm saying is we take it completely out of the public and we deal with it privately, okay? So that when you bring equity to the court, you are being congruent with your intention. You are congruent with the fact that you are objectively and willfully and to the best of your effort dealing with the matter privately in the best interest of all involved. And that's going to come across, even if you don't say that in so many words, because you are doing that, that's going to come across, and that's going to infuse your equity with more power, with more potency. Don't believe me? Well, hey, give it a try. Give it a try. There's no harm in trying, right? So your equity will be more powerful because you're going to be congruent in the fact that you are taking care of it privately, and therefore there really is nothing for the public side to adjudicate. There's no controversy. See, the courts need some controversy. They need a contractual dispute to even have a proceeding. And if there is no controversy in the public, if there's nothing to adjudicate in the courts, there's nothing for the court to do. It's really that simple. Okay? Now, it's simple, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? I talk extensively about how to discharge court cases in equity, and this is something that's not very well known, but we're getting there, okay? But it's a definitive process because equity recognizes the fact that the courts are all commercial. It recognizes that that we're dealing with negotiable instruments, and that's why they call it a charge, because it's all accounting, and the judge has the power and authority and the title to fully settle the matter immediately when you properly bring equity. Okay, what we're teaching extensively at the Freedom Studio. But here's the thing. I don't think that would work if you just do it mechanically. You have to embody the spirit of equity, which is you really have a true and genuine desire to resolve the matter privately to the best for the best outcome of all involved. Again, children, family members, spouses, former ex-spouses, anyone who's involved. You truly have their best interests at heart, in your mind, and that you're just looking to seek the most equitable outcome for everyone. Okay? When you have that spirit, then when you go to the public side to discharge everything through your acceptance, which is what we teach and what others are teaching, it's a known process, then that process is going to be much more effective, and you're going to take all that heartache, all that gut-wrenching, heartbreaking experiences in the court, and you're going to move it completely into the private. Now, will there still be issues? Will there still be disputes and disagreements? Of course. Of course. It's our nature to have, everybody's got an opinion. Everybody has a different way of looking at things, right? But self-responsibility, because if you joined in partnership with someone to bear children and raise children, guess who's responsible? Guess who's responsible for that? You are. Both the mother and the father. Everyone's responsible, okay? So just own that shit. Own that shit and keep it in the private so that you can resolve it privately to the best of your ability. Okay? Again, the main point here is in the public side, in the courts, in family court, it's always going to be painful, and it's pretty arbitrary whether the outcome's going to really be in the best interest of all involved. It may be somewhat in their interest, but guess who? Let's just focus again on when children are involved. Guess who's going to be the real loser in these disputes? You got it, the child. The children are always going to be the big losers in that kind of scenario. So we have to transcend this, folks. We have to bring it back into the private. Okay? Now, there probably is objectively a shortage of great private mediators, and that's something that we're going to have to address. That, in my opinion, that's one of the most noble professions that you could even imagine. Just like being a trustee is a very noble profession. And that, of course, segues into trust. So now we're going to talk a little bit about private trust, because I mentioned earlier that when it comes to probate or family matters, using a trust can be a great way to address it. Okay? So let's just touch briefly on trust. So trust is a great way to protect family assets, to keep them out of court as well, and to make sure that even if things don't go well, the trust can be set up in a way to account for the unexpected. You know, a separation, a couple decides to separate, or there's some kind of unforeseen future event that has the potential to harm the interests of either someone in the family or the whole family, right? So having private trust set up with non-related trustees is a really good idea. And that's also why trusteeship, in addition to being a private mediator, these are such important roles. Okay, these are such important roles if we're talking about the private. Okay, but I think I've made my point. There's probably a lot more that I could say about this. This is kind of the first time that I brought this up. Like I said, on my previous channel, and I'll probably provide a link here somewhere, a few years ago, I did do a whole video, a whole presentation on how to raise children under natural law. And that may be a presentation worth checking out, because it provides some really foundational knowledge, and it really gets you thinking about how important it is to raise children and what that actually means, and the level of responsibility involved, so you can take that decision seriously, as we should, so that things are much less likely to end up in these kinds of disagreements. Not that it would never happen. Hey, I'm not being unrealistic here. Of course, things are going to still end up in disagreements and disputes, okay? But the goal is just to keep them private. Keep them out of the public. Keep them in the private. The public has no business intervening with or mediating over private family matters. That is inappropriate. And if you're in the commercial courts, like I said, where it's all legal fictions, and you're just representing a legal fiction, how in the world can you ever expect the court to really have your best interests or the best interests of the children in mind? It's incompatible. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable. Okay? So if any of this resonates with you and you want to dive in deeper, a couple of suggestions. Definitely go back and check some of my other content. So if you haven't done so, this might be a great moment to subscribe. Of course, if you got value from this, give a nice little fist bump to the like button. Give it some love and attention. Another great option is to join one of our monthly free workshops, where you can learn a little more about what we do at the Freedom Studio and how we roll. Our core curriculum, which again is natural law, equity, and private trust, the big three. Okay, that's pretty much what we focus on, almost to the exclusion of everything else. Because hey, if you want to be really good at something, it's important to specialize. So that's pretty much what we focus on. And I'm of the personal opinion, from my own experience and from what I'm seeing, that mastering these three unlocks a tremendous amount of freedom, prosperity, abundance, peace, goodwill, great relationships, and so much more. It's almost hard to express how wonderful it all is. Okay? I mean, if there was anything close to creating paradise on earth, mastering those three is probably going to get you way farther along that path than 99% of the nonsense that you're going to run into out there. So hey, I hope that resonates with you. I hope you were able to get something out of that. At the very least, to think about it. Because again, this is not legal advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not at all trying to tell you what to do. I'm just sharing with you an idea, or a set of ideas, an approach that you may not have considered. And again, if you are directly being impacted by this because you yourself are embroiled in some kind of family court matter, it's probably going to be a lot more relevant for you. And secondarily, you probably know someone, everybody knows somebody who's either primarily or secondarily being affected by that. So share this video with them. So at the Freedom Studio, we've got a lot of great educational resources. We've got the memberships. Like I said, we got the free workshop, we got the memberships. If you're very specifically dealing with a situation and you want to meet either with Aaron or myself or one of our other advisors just to talk it through, just to get someone else taking a look at it and share with you some ideas, hey, we're available to do that as well. Regardless of how you move forward, I really hope to see you in network. And if you do join our community, I look forward to meeting you at some point as well. Thank you very much, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.